Hey everyone, I'm Layla. I'm 30 years old and I live here in sunny San Diego. If you're tuning in, maybe you felt like the other kid in your family, the one who didn't quite measure up, or whose worth was measured differently. Maybe you've built something incredible from scratch, fueled by a silent hurt. If that resonates, you're in the right place. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It helps me feel connected to all of you navigating your own journeys. For most of my life, I was the quiet, capable daughter. The one who didn't ask for much, who seemed to manage just fine on her own. I put myself through nursing school, worked nights, juggled shifts, and built a solid career as a pediatric nurse. I love what I do, caring for kids, being there for families during tough times. It felt meaningful, grounded, but there was always this undercurrent in my own family, a subtle tilt towards my younger sister, Chloe. She was the fragile one, the one who needed more help, more attention, more everything. I told myself it was just personality differences, that parents love their children differently, but equally. I clung to that belief, wrapped it around the little hurts like a worn blanket. But then, something happened that shattered that illusion completely. It wasn't subtle, it wasn't open to interpretation. It was a financial decision disguised as a life lesson, a betrayal wrapped in plain sight. My parents, comfortably retired, decided to give Chloe a significant portion of their future inheritance, enough money, outright, to buy a condo in a competitive market like ours. When I learned about it, not from them directly, but through Chloe's excited posts online, I felt this cold dread creep in. My stomach tightened. When I finally worked up the courage to ask them about it, to understand their reasoning, the explanation they gave me hit me like a physical blow. They told me it wouldn't be fair to do the same for me. Not that they didn't have the money, not that I didn't deserve it, but that it wouldn't be fair. Fair to whom? Fair in what universe? That moment changed everything. It felt like being told my independence, my hard work, my ability to stand on my own 2 feet, were not strengths to be admired, but deficiencies that disqualified me from their support. It felt like they were saying, "You don't need us, Layla, so you don't get the benefit of our planning and generosity in the way Chloe does. She needs it more." As if needing them less meant I was somehow less loved, less deserving of their equity. It was a pain so sharp, it took my breath away. For a while, I spiraled. I questioned everything I thought I knew about my family, about my place in it. I felt invisible, undervalued, like all my quiet efforts my entire life had been, what? A performance they weren't watching? That pain, that sense of profound injustice, could have crushed me. It certainly felt like it might for a while, but something else happened. A spark ignited, small at first, then growing into a steady flame. If they thought I didn't need their help, fine. If they thought my capability meant I was less deserving, I would prove them wrong by building something entirely on my own terms, something they had no part in funding or creating. I wouldn't ask, I wouldn't beg, I wouldn't even explain. I would just do. And when I finally achieved a significant milestone, reaching a level of financial independence they hadn't anticipated for me, I didn't write a letter, I didn't make a dramatic phone call, I didn't post about it online, I just sent them a fruit basket, nothing more, nothing less. A quiet, deliberate message delivered with a bow. And that, in a nutshell, is the heart of the story I want to share with you today. It's about turning deep hurt into powerful action, about reclaiming your worth when others fail to see it, and about the quiet, sometimes ironic, ways we signal our liberation. Stick around to hear how it all unfolded. Growing up, I was the older sister by 3 years. Chloe was a whirlwind of emotions, easily upset, prone to anxieties. I, on the other hand, was the calm in her storm. I learned early on how to soothe her tears, anticipate her needs, and generally be the stable force in our dynamic. Our parents praised me for it, called me mature, responsible. It felt good, being the reliable one. It felt like love, like appreciation. I didn't see it then, but I was being conditioned to be the caretaker, the one who gave, while Chloe was positioned as the one who received. It wasn't malicious, not overtly. It was subtle things. Chloe got the immediate comfort when she cried. I was told to be brave. Chloe's small accomplishments were celebrated with fanfare. Mine were met with quiet nods of approval, as if my success was simply expected. Her struggles were family crises, mine were personal challenges I was encouraged to handle independently. I remember once, around middle school, I saved up my allowance and babysitting money for months to buy a new bike. It was nothing fancy, but I had earned every dollar myself. I was so proud. When I showed my parents, they said, "That's nice, dear. You're so good with money." The same week, Chloe mentioned in passing that her old bike felt too small. The next day, a brand new, top-of-the-line bike appeared in the garage, a surprise from Mom and Dad. I rode my hard-earned, slightly less shiny bike next to hers, a knot tightening in my stomach. I told myself it was just convenience. They had the money, why wait? But the contrast was stark. My self-sufficiency was acknowledged, but her need was met, immediately and generously. This pattern continued into adulthood. I paid for my own college tuition, working part-time through nursing school, taking out modest loans I repaid promptly. Chloe went to an expensive private university with her tuition fully covered. She needs the structure, my mother explained. I lived in shared apartments, pinching pennies, learning to stretch a grocery budget. Chloe had a small, furnished apartment provided by our parents while she was in school, and they continued to subsidize her rent for a few years after graduation, while she found her footing in a creative field that wasn't immediately lucrative. Again, I rationalized. I told myself they were helping her launch, giving her a leg up. My nursing career was stable, practical. I didn't need that kind of financial bridge. I was the reliable bridge for them, helping out with small things when they needed it, never asking for anything in return. I helped my dad set up his computer, drove my mom to appointments when her car was in the shop, spent weekends doing yard work they could no longer manage easily. These were acts of love, yes, but they were also extensions of that ingrained caretaker role. I gave freely, expecting nothing but continued connection and belonging. The call came on a Tuesday evening. I was grading papers, unwinding after a long shift at the hospital. My mom's voice was bright, almost giddy. "Layla, darling, we have some exciting news." I smiled, expecting perhaps news of a trip or a new hobby they'd taken up. "Oh, what is it, Mom?" "Well, you know Chloe has been wanting to buy a place? The market is just awful for young people trying to get started. It's so hard." She sighed dramatically, a sound I knew well. "Your father and I have been talking, and we've decided to help her out. We're gifting her enough for a down payment and a bit extra for renovations. She's found a lovely little condo perfect for her." My smile faltered. My stomach clenched. That's very generous, Mom. How much is enough?" I tried to keep my voice light, but a tremor betrayed me. I already knew, deep down, this wasn't just a bit extra. She named a figure that made my head spin. It was easily a third of their stated net worth, possibly more depending on how they'd structured things. An amount that would change Chloe's financial trajectory overnight. Wow, I managed. That's incredible for her. I paused, gathering my courage. "So, are you doing the same for me?" The question hung in the air, heavy and silent. I felt my heart pounding in my chest, a desperate, childish hope warring with a grim premonition. My mother's tone shifted, the bright giddiness replaced by a carefully neutral, almost apologetic register. "Well, darling, that's what we discussed, and we decided. It wouldn't be fair." The words echoed in the sudden silence, bouncing off the walls of my small apartment. "Wouldn't be fair?" I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. The air felt thin. "That's right, honey," she continued, completely missing the seismic shift happening within me. "Chloe needs this start. Her job isn't as secure as yours, and honestly, real estate prices are just crazy for single people trying to buy. You're so independent, Layla. You've always managed so well. Giving you the same amount, well, you'd just put it in savings, wouldn't you? It wouldn't be making the same kind of difference for you that it will for Chloe, who really needs this boost. It just wouldn't be equitable. We're trying to be fair, you see. Fair, equitable. The words felt like stones hitting me in the chest. They weren't being fair to me. They were using my strength, my hard-earned stability, as a reason to exclude me from a significant family benefit. My competence was being penalized. My sister's perceived need was being rewarded. It was a twisted logic that made no sense, and yet, in their minds, it was perfectly sound. So, I said, my voice dangerously low, because I worked hard, paid my own way, and built a stable life, I don't get any help. But because Chloe struggles, she gets a third of your wealth gifted to her. Layla, don't put it like that. That sounds so calculating. My mother's voice sharpened with defensive frustration. We're just trying to help our daughters. Chloe needs this to get on the property ladder. You'll be fine on your own, you always are. Yes, I said, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. I always am, because I had to be. The realization hit me with full force. My entire life, I had been the one who had to be fine, who had to be independent, because the resources, the attention, the safety net, were perpetually directed elsewhere. The conversation ended shortly after, strained and cold. I hung up the phone, my hand trembling. Tears welled in my eyes, hot and stinging, but they didn't fall. I felt frozen, a deep ache settling in my chest. The worn blanket of rationalization had been ripped away, leaving me exposed to the harsh truth I had avoided for so long. This wasn't new. It was just a larger, undeniable manifestation of the pattern that had always existed. The days and weeks that followed were a blur of pain and confusion. I went through the motions at work, caring for my young patients with a detached professionalism, while inside, a silent scream echoed. How could they? How could the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, who were supposed to be my safe harbor, quantify my worth so clearly and find it less? Less deserving of support, less in need of ease, simply less. I replayed conversations from my childhood, little moments of dismissal or preference that I had brushed off. The extra help Chloe received with homework, the car they bought her in high school, while I drove a beat-up used one I'd paid half for. The constant worries about her mental health that overshadowed my own quiet anxieties. It wasn't just money. It was energy, emotional bandwidth, validation. It had always flowed more freely towards her. I spoke to a few close friends, tentatively, testing the waters of how this kind of pain could be articulated. They listened, offered sympathy, expressed outrage on my behalf. Their validation was a small comfort, but it couldn't fill the gaping hole left by my parents' decision. I felt isolated, grappling with a family dynamic that seemed both uniquely hurtful and, I was starting to realize, disturbingly common. So many stories of the responsible child, the easy child, bearing the invisible weight, while the difficult or needy child received the overt support. One evening, scrolling through social media, a habit I probably should have broken sooner, I saw Chloe's gleeful post. Photos of her new condo keys, a bottle of champagne, her beaming face next to my parents, all three looking triumphant. The caption read something about dream come true, and thanks to the best parents ever. It was a punch to the gut. There I was, still living in my modest apartment, working exhausting shifts, my dreams feeling suddenly distant and fragile, while her dream was handed to her, gift-wrapped. That image, that stark visual representation of the disparity, was the final straw for the quiet, suffering version of me. Something snapped. Not in a violent way, but a quiet, resolute shift. I couldn't change them. I couldn't make them see my value in the way I craved. But I could change how I responded. I could stop waiting for their validation, their recognition, their fairness. I could build my own damn castle. The idea wasn't entirely new. For a while, I'd been dabbling in creating digital resources for pediatric nurses, study guides, care plan templates, little cheat sheets that made the overwhelming amount of information easier to manage. It started as a hobby, a way to consolidate my own notes and help junior colleagues. I had a knack for explaining complex concepts simply, for organizing information intuitively. Colleagues had told me I should sell them, that they were better than anything available online. I had dismissed it, telling myself I didn't have the time, the business acumen, the energy. Now, fueled by a potent mix of anger and a fierce desire for self-reliance, the idea felt urgent. If my value wasn't recognized by my own family, I would create value elsewhere. I would build something that was undeniably mine, built on my skills, my knowledge, my effort. It wouldn't be about proving them wrong, not entirely. It would be about proving to myself that I was capable of creating abundance, of generating my own security, without needing anyone else's permission or handout. It became an obsession. I started small, working late into the night after my nursing shifts. I built a simple website, learned the basics of e-commerce and digital marketing through free online courses. I refined my existing resources, created new ones, pouring every ounce of my focus and energy into the project. Sleep became a luxury. Social life was minimal. My small apartment became my office, my studio, my warehouse of digital dreams. There were moments of crushing doubt. Was I crazy? Was this just a way to channel my hurt? Would anyone actually pay for these resources? The learning curve was steep, the technology frustrating, the isolation sometimes overwhelming. I was still working full-time as a nurse, a demanding and emotionally draining job. Balancing the two felt impossible at times. There were nights I cried from sheer exhaustion, staring at my laptop screen, wondering if I should just give up, accept my lot, and try to find a way to live with the quiet ache of being overlooked. My family noticed the shift, though they didn't understand the cause. I was less available for their last-minute requests. I politely declined weekend trips that would take away from my work time. My mother complained I was becoming distant, that I was too focused on that little project of yours. They still talked about Chloe's condo, her renovations, her new neighborhood. My budding business was invisible to them, or perhaps deliberately ignored. It didn't fit their narrative of me as the independent, self-sufficient daughter who needed nothing. Chloe, oblivious or perhaps willfully ignorant of the pain their financial decision had caused me, would occasionally mention my parents' generosity, sometimes even venting about the stress of renovating or furnishing her new place. I listened, offered neutral comments, building a wall of emotional distance around myself. I couldn't share my struggles with the business, my fears, my exhaustion, because I knew they wouldn't understand. They saw financial success as something you were given, not something you built brick by painstaking brick. Months turned into a year, then two. The business grew, slowly at first, then picking up momentum. Word spread through online nursing communities. My resources were filling a genuine need. The small trickle of sales became a steady stream, then a significant revenue flow. I reinvested every dollar back into the business, expanding my offerings, hiring a part-time virtual assistant, improving my website. I learned about SEO, social media marketing, customer service. I was constantly learning, adapting, pushing myself far beyond what I thought I was capable of. There was a fierce satisfaction in it. Every sale, every positive customer review felt like a small victory. It was proof that my skills, my knowledge, my hard work had tangible value, value that people were willing to pay for. It was a different kind of validation than I had ever received from my family, one that was earned, not given. It was empowering. The day I hit my first $1 million in revenue was surreal. I was sitting at my kitchen table, the same table where I had sat the night my mother told me it wouldn't be fair to give me money. I was reviewing sales figures, and the number just appeared on the screen. 7 figures, $1 million. It wasn't profit yet, of course. There were expenses and taxes and reinvestment, but it was revenue. $1 million generated by me from scratch, with no help, no handouts, just sheer grit and hard work. I stared at the number, tears finally streaming down my face, not from pain, but from a complex mix of exhaustion, relief, pride, and a lingering, sharp sadness. I had done it. I had built my own abundance, and in doing so, I had starkly highlighted the injustice of my parents' earlier decision. It wasn't that I couldn't succeed without them. It was that they had chosen not to support my journey in the way they had supported my sisters, precisely because they believed I didn't need it. My self-sufficiency had become my barrier. I sat there for a long time, letting the reality sink in. What did this mean? Should I tell them? Should I announce it? The thought felt performative, desperate for the recognition they had withheld. It wasn't about them anymore. This million was about me, about reclaiming my narrative, about proving my worth to the only person who truly needed convincing, myself. But the idea of a quiet acknowledgement, a subtle nod to the journey, began to form. Not an announcement of the money, not a boast, but something that spoke volumes without saying a word. Something that mirrored their earlier action, but with a twist. Chloe got a condo, a solid, tangible asset, a comfortable start, a gift. I got. What? A dismissal. A judgment that I was fine. What do you send someone who thought you didn't need their support, who essentially told you your hard work disqualified you from their help, after you've gone and built something substantial entirely on your own? You don't send a bill. You don't send a triumphant parade float. You send something innocuous, something traditional, something mundane. A fruit basket. The idea landed with a quiet certainty. It was perfect. It was polite. It was utterly devoid of drama or explanation. People send fruit baskets for all sorts of reasons. Holidays, condolences, thank yous. This one would be none of those things. It would simply be a fruit basket. From Layla. To Mom and Dad, delivered to their door. The planning felt almost mischievous. I researched fruit basket delivery services online, finding a reputable one that offered nice, but not overly extravagant, options. I chose a medium-sized basket, filled with a variety of fresh fruits, nothing exotic or ostentatious, just good, standard fruit. The checkout process felt strangely significant. I typed in their address, scheduled the delivery for a random Tuesday. There was a small box for a gift message. I paused, considering my options. A simple thinking of you, too warm, too fake. A cryptic message, too dramatic. In the end, I left it blank, no note needed. The fruit itself was the message. I imagined them receiving it, the delivery person at the door, the surprise, the card attached, seeing my name as the sender, the confusion. Why a fruit basket? Was it my birthday? Number? Their anniversary? Number just? Fruit. From Layla. It felt powerful because it was understated. They had made a grand gesture of financial favoritism, announced with fanfare. My response was a quiet, untraceable act of sending perishable goods. It was the antithesis of a dramatic revelation of wealth. It was mundane on the surface, yet packed with a silent, heavy meaning for anyone who understood the context. For them. The fruit basket was delivered the following week. I didn't call to announce it. I didn't send a follow-up text. I simply waited. The call came later that evening. Layla, did you send us a fruit basket? My mother's voice held that particular tone of bewildered suspicion she reserved for things she couldn't immediately categorize. Yes, Mom, I did, I replied, keeping my voice calm and neutral. Oh, well, thank you. That was unexpected. A pause. Is there a reason? Is everything all right? Everything is fine, Mom, I said. I just felt like sending you a fruit basket. Another pause, longer this time. I could almost hear her mind working, trying to find the hidden meaning, the ulterior motive, the explanation that made sense in her world. Well, it's very thoughtful, she finally said, though her tone suggested anything but. All this fruit, it's a lot. Did you get a good deal on it? I almost laughed. Was her immediate thought about the cost, the practicality? Not the sentiment, not the potential hidden message? No, Mom, I paid full price. Oh, well, thank you, she repeated, the conversation circling back on itself, awkward and unresolved. It will certainly give us something to eat. We spoke for a few more minutes about trivial things, the weather, my job, her garden. Chloe wasn't mentioned. The fruit basket wasn't mentioned again. The unspoken hovered between us, thick and heavy. I had sent the message. It was up to them to decipher it, or to ignore it. Either way, I had done my part. I had closed that particular loop on my own terms. My success didn't go unnoticed forever, of course. As my business grew, gaining more visibility in my niche, it became harder to hide. An article was written about me in an industry publication. I was invited to speak at a nursing conference about leveraging technology in healthcare education. These things, undeniable markers of professional achievement, eventually reached my parents' ears, usually through well-meaning relatives or family friends who saw the article or attended the conference. Their reaction was complex. On the one hand, there was undeniable pride. My mother would mention my daughter, the entrepreneur, to her friends. My father asked me surprisingly detailed questions about revenue models and scaling, showing a respect for the business side that he had never shown for my nursing career itself. I could see them grappling with the cognitive dissonance. The daughter they had deemed fine on her own, and therefore less in need of their support, had gone and built something far larger, far more lucrative than they had ever envisioned, certainly far exceeding the financial boost they had given Chloe. But beneath the pride, there was also a new kind of tension. The unspoken question hung in the air. Now that you have all this money, surely you'll. The asks started subtly at first. Suggestions that I could help out with family expenses, contribute to renovations on their own house, perhaps even invest in one of Chloe's less than successful ventures. The narrative shifted from, "You don't need help," to, "Now you can help us, Chloe." It was a subtle but infuriating form of emotional and financial exploitation. A new angle on the old pattern of my resources being seen as communal property, available to prop up other family members, while their resources remained theirs to distribute as they saw fit, always favoring the perceived neediest, which was never me. I found myself needing to set boundaries I had never even conceived of before. Saying no felt alien, a violation of the good daughter programming that had run deep for 30 years. But the pain of the past betrayal, the knowledge of how hard I had worked for every dollar, gave me strength. This money wasn't a gift I felt obligated to share, it was the fruit of my labor, the tangible representation of my self-worth reclaimed. Mom, I would say gently, but firmly, when the hints started. My business finances are separate from my personal life. And my personal finances are needed to grow the business and secure my own future. I'm not in a position to contribute financially in that way. The responses were often a mix of guilt-tripping and dismissal. But it's family, Layla. We always helped you. A statement that conveniently ignored the specific, large gift to Chloe. It's not fair that Chloe is still struggling when you have so much. The irony of that word, fair, was almost unbearable. Is this what success does to you? Makes you hard-hearted? These conversations were painful. Each one chipped away at the idealized version of family I still sometimes held on to. There were tears, mine, sometimes my mother's, usually when she felt thwarted. There were raised voices. There were periods of strained silence between calls. Setting boundaries felt like walking a tightrope over an abyss. Part of me feared that saying no, that protecting myself and my resources, would lead to complete estrangement. Would they cut me off entirely if I wasn't serving the role of the reliable provider? The fear was real, a residue of a lifetime of seeking their approval. But the other side of the abyss was the endless drain, the continued exploitation, the simmering resentment that would poison my hard-won peace. I chose the tightrope. I chose my peace. The confrontation about the past, about the fairness of the condo money, was harder. It didn't happen in one dramatic blow-up, but in fragmented, emotionally charged discussions over time. I tried to explain the depth of the hurt, the feeling of being dismissed, the message their actions had sent me about my value. Their reactions were defensive, minimizing. "Oh, Layla, you're still hung up on that? It wasn't about not valuing you, it was about need. We couldn't afford to do the same for both of you at that exact moment." A lie, or at least a distortion of the truth. They couldn't, or wouldn't, acknowledge the favoritism, the pain it had caused, the fundamental unfairness of their reasoning. Admitting that would require them to confront their own biases, their own narrative of the needy child versus the capable child. It became clear that I would not get the apology, the acknowledgement, the validation I craved from them. Their perception was fixed. Their actions were justified in their own minds. This was perhaps the most painful realization of all. I had built a successful business, I had created abundance. I had found my voice and set boundaries, but I could not change their perspective. The transformation wasn't a sudden event. It was a gradual shedding of layers. I started therapy, which was invaluable. My therapist helped me untangle the years of programming, the ingrained need to people please, the false belief that my worth was tied to external validation or my usefulness to others. I learned to recognize the patterns of manipulation and gaslighting, to trust my own feelings and perceptions. I distanced myself, physically and emotionally. Calls became less frequent, visits shorter and less emotionally intense. I learned to steer conversations away from topics that triggered the old dynamics. I focused on building relationships that were reciprocal, supportive, and healthy. My friends became more like chosen family. I explored new hobbies, traveled, invested in my own well-being. The wealth I had created wasn't just financial. It was wealth of spirit, of confidence, of self-knowledge. I no longer measured myself by my parents' flawed scale. My worth was inherent, not contingent on their approval or financial distribution. There was a period of grief, mourning the loss of the family I wished I had, the unconditional acceptance that never truly existed. But mourning gave way to acceptance, and acceptance to peace. I had built a life that was authentically mine, one where my efforts were rewarded, my boundaries respected, by those I chose to keep close, and my value was undeniable. The fruit basket sat on their counter for a few days, then was presumably consumed. It was a silent, symbolic act that marked a turning point. I didn't need their money, their validation, or their version of fairness to thrive. I could generate my own abundance, define my own worth, and build my own future. The fruit basket was the quiet period at the end of a very long, challenging sentence. It said, "I see what you did. I heard what you said. And I built this anyway." Reaching that $1 million milestone was a powerful moment, not because of the number itself, but because of what it represented: resilience, determination, and the refusal to be limited by someone else's narrow perception of my potential. It was freedom. The relationship with my family is different now. It's not the close, intertwined dynamic I once knew, the one where I was the quiet anchor. There's distance, a polite formality that sometimes feels sad, sometimes necessary. Boundaries are clearer, though occasionally tested. I still love them, in a complex, sometimes hurting way. But my love for them no longer dictates my self-worth or my decisions. I am no longer defined by their favoritism, their dismissals, or their attempts at control. I am Layla. I am a pediatric nurse. I am an entrepreneur. I am capable, worthy, and self-sufficient, not because I was forced to be, but because I chose to embrace my strength. I built my own table, and it is overflowing not just with financial security, but with self-respect, peace, and a quiet, powerful sense of freedom. The fruit basket was just the beginning of my own abundant harvest. And that brings us to today. I'm sitting here, sharing this story with you, because I know I'm not alone. I know there are so many of you out there who have felt overlooked, undervalued, or betrayed by the people who were supposed to be your foundation. Maybe your story involves money, maybe it involves emotional support, or recognition, or something else entirely. The specifics might differ, but the feeling of hurt, the struggle for validation, the journey towards reclaiming your power, those are universal. My path wasn't easy. There were tears, doubt, moments I wanted to give up. Building something from scratch while healing from deep emotional wounds is incredibly hard work. It requires courage, resilience, and a stubborn belief in yourself, even when that belief feels fragile. But it is possible. It is absolutely possible to take that pain, that injustice, and turn it into fuel. Fuel to build your own future, on your own terms. Fuel to define your own worth, independent of anyone else's opinion. Fuel to set boundaries that protect your peace and your energy. If you're in the middle of your own version of this story, feeling unseen, feeling hurt, feeling unsure how to move forward, please know this. Your value is not determined by how others treat you, or what they give you, or what they withhold. Your capability is not a reason to be neglected. Your independence is a superpower, not a deficiency. You are enough, exactly as you are. You are capable of building your own dreams, creating your own security, and finding your own peace. It starts with recognizing the truth of your situation, allowing yourself to feel the hurt, and then making a conscious choice to invest in yourself. It might mean setting boundaries, even if they are met with resistance. It might mean distancing yourself from relationships that are consistently harmful. It will definitely mean doing the internal work to heal and to build your self-worth from the ground up. My fruit basket moment was small, but it was mighty for me. It was a quiet declaration of independence. Find your own version of that moment. Find your own way to acknowledge your journey, your struggles, and your triumphs. And remember, you don't need anyone's permission or validation to build the life you deserve. The resources, the strength, the resilience, they are already within you. You just need to tap into them. Thank you for listening. If this resonated with you, please give this video a like. It helps more people find this story. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to join our community. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you experienced something similar? How did you navigate it? Your experiences can help others feel less alone. Building this life has shown me that true wealth isn't just in bank accounts, it's in boundaries, in self-respect, and in the courage to walk your own path. Even if it means walking it alone for a while. Stay strong, stay true to yourselves, and keep building your beautiful, abundant lives. I'll see you next time.